My dad was, when he took this film, he was 27 years old, approximately, because he was born in 1910, and this is done in 1937.
Yeah, it was dangerous, no kidding.
Now this is the start of the film. These two guys chopping down the tree. Don't know who they are. My father never told me. And this, I believe they were following these trees at 10 Mile. A lot of hard work.
They used to call them big falling saws is what they are. They're falling saws, and that right now they're getting ready to fall the tree. See, there's two men on springboards on the ends, and one pulls one way and one pulls the other. And there goes the tree. It'd take a half hour or more. There's two guys, there's the pair, there's another fella chopping on the other side too. But anyway, yeah, there's always two guys when they're falling. And this is back a long ways. There's no tin helmets or anything like that.
Nobody wore a hard hat in those days.
And that guy that walked there with that hat on must have been the boss. He was too well dressed and he wasn't dirty. Now they're putting the wedges in the tree to make the tree go over, to lift. Believe it or not, them wedges are only so thick, you know, but they wedge in there and they lift just by pounding on them wedges like they're doing. They're lifting that tree to go the way they want. Because on the other side of that tree there's an undercut. I don't know if you noticed that or not. They can make the tree go anywhere they want, wherever they put that undercut in. Of course, if the tree is heavily leaned before they start, then they gotta go the way the tree is leaning. So, and this here is, them mules, they're wood mules that pack the wood for the yarders. In order to make steam in the yarders the log with. Now look at that mule with that load of logs on it. Or not logs, but wood. Now they'll dump that. I don't think it'll show a dump, but that's what they're going to do. They'll dump it by a yarder. There's the yarder right there. Now that thing is going to, you'll see in a minute, it'll be pulling in logs.
I remember a tale that my A.J. Gray told me. He said, when they first put the yarder out there at Camp 20, they painted it white. And he came by there and told the forest department, says, our yarders aren't white, because they're black or gray. So he made them paint it.
There's the yarder puncher there. There's the guy that's running that yarder to pull the logs in. He's probably the highest paid man in the woods. And he doesn't have nothing to do but pull a couple of little levers. But there's a choker setter. Now that guy, there's two guys choking. They'll show another guy here in a minute. And that cable is 1.5 inch cable with this big slide on it and a big knob on the other end that they have to, well, you'll see that. It'll show that in a minute. There you go. There's two guys. Now they're throwing that cable over a log in order to choke it so that guy that's running the yarder can pull that log up the hill. See the knob on the end of that choke? And that's a big piece of line. That's about 20 foot, 1.25 inch cable. That's heavy. Of course, it takes two men to handle it, so you can imagine how heavy it is.
think my father said that guy's name was, smoking the cigarette, was Yorkstrom. I think that his nickname was York.
You know what that guy's doing? That's a whistle punk, we called it. You see that wire? See his hand? See that wire in his hand? That's a wire runs all the way. You see the way he moved? That wire runs all the way to that machine where that guy's operating that yarder, and that yarder man goes on them whistles. And he says, "Go ahead." The choker setter hollers at him, and he, in the meantime, has got a wire all the way to that machine with a whistle on the end of it, and whichever way he hits that wire, that engineer knows whether it should go ahead or come back with that cable.
That looks like Clayton Mallory walking along the ties there on the railroad track. This is one of the first cats that the Union Company got or bought, and this is down in Big River.
I remember that real well. I worked behind them kind of tractors with them arch behind it. So see, that guy come into the landing with that tractor with all them logs behind it. But that's going back quite a ways, but heck, I worked behind them kind of rigs. So he'd bring the logs into landing, and pretty soon it'll show him loading them logs onto a railroad car.
I don't know if Eddie told you, but they always have to have one tree to hook the cable to the other side, and then the yarder was on the other side pulling them up.
Here's the guy that's unhooking the log now. He's taking that wire off the log. He's looking up in the air to see if anything's going to hit him, too. That's dangerous. Now he's looking on this guy's working on the landing. He's putting wire around each end. There's two guys, one on each end of the log, to putting that strap on. Now you'll see that log lift, and they'll put it on that railroad car that's off to the left there a little bit. Here we go. And that guy making signals with his hand is telling the engineer what to do with that log. Let go. There he goes. So they unhook it and do that again with another log until that car is loaded.
All these guys look the same. That even looks like my dad standing there, but it can't be. That's the kind of hats they all wore in those days. Boy, dangerous. And this is Camp 2. When I was a young kid, I used to go to the Chinese cooks and go have breakfast there. Used to spend the summers out there. I'll tell you an interesting story before you go any farther here. There was a wooden culvert right underneath the logging road, and when they had the big off-highway trucks hauling the logs in. And we used to go down to the swimming hole, and they used to dam up 10 Mile River, and that's where we swam. But my mother didn't like us to be alone down there all the time. She wanted to get a hold of us. So we had, where the old phones used to crank and whine, you know. So she had one at the house, and we had one down at the river. But we had to get a line down there. And we couldn't put the line over across the road because of the logging trucks would come. We couldn't, there's not trees high enough to string a line across. So we said, we'll put this line underneath the culvert. But we couldn't figure out how to get the phone line in through the culvert. And, you know, it's 40 or 50 feet long. So we had this cat and this dog. And this is not a bull story. And we tied a piece of string onto the cat's tail, put him into the culvert, and the dog didn't like cats, and he sat there, went in barking at the cat. The cat dug the string through the culvert, and it came out the other side, and we got it, and then we tied our line through it and pulled the phone line through.
We used to have to ride that train from camp up to the woods where we were working. Yeah, we rode one of them cars with any logs on it, but in the morning, that's the way we got to work. In fact, we rode a train from Fort Bragg all the way to the woods at one time. Mm-hmm. When they had the railroad up the beach and all the way back to the wood, yeah, we used to go. That guy's coming to town with a broken tractor behind there. Now this is dumping the logs down at the mill in the pond. Now watch that guy with that big, there he goes, he shoves them. He don't shove them, but he just works that stick around, and the other guy does the shoving. It doesn't show anybody but him. Yeah, Joe Poke, yeah, right. That's the only way they could, well, there was other ways of doing it. They did it in later years. This is a whole load going into the pond at one time.
Right there, they have men walking around on the logs and getting them in place to go up the chute here to go into the big mill. And later on, they got a boat with a big heavy bow on it. And that's when they got the boat going around there later. And it was too dangerous for the men, and pushed the logs around to get ready to go up into the...
And some of them logs will sink, you know, and they don't come back up. They used to have a big old hand cranking thing there with tongs on it. Get a hold of it and crank it up out of the bottom. There's a guy shoving a log around. Now that log might be too long. That saw is going to start up, I think, in a minute and saw that log in two. There you go. Now there's pretty good sized logs there. See, when they get that big, they could only put one on a car.
One of those fellows walking up the steps there is my grandfather, Guy Weller, my mother's father. That guy is Henry Dockham, guy with the pipe.
Yeah, that's a green chain, right. Grader, they called him a grader. He knew by looking at the board if it was any good, and then had numbers. He had a piece of chalk in his hand, if you'll notice.
That was kind of fun. In those days when the lumber was mostly clear all heart, and they were just marking the ends with the split ends, the trim. trim, when I had to trim was 2 feet, because everything had to be in even numbers, 16s, 18s, 20s.
But this guy had a hard job too, because some of that lumber's, well, not really. You get so that you can handle that stuff pretty damn easy. And you know, he's got an apron on too. Did you see that? Now this is where they stack the boards out in the yard and stuff. They had them electric cranes. That track is a little bit downhill. There's a guy riding that, see? And he's a brakeman on that load, going to the boat.
No straps on these units of lumber. How they didn't, more of them didn't fall apart. There's the lumber on a car to come down to the dock where the boat is. Then they have a horse to draw these carts back up to the mill again, to the green chain.
Them three guys in that boat, that's Joe Gomes, John Gomes, and Gus Carlson. They used to have to tie them big ships up when they came in. So, boy, I've seen them out here when it was so darn rough you couldn't even see that little boat. It just disappeared, and they were tying one up or letting it go. Look at that. Every ship that came in here to get lumber, them three guys were there to tie them up, tie the boat up. And Noyo had a big, used to anchor them great, they used to call them trampers. They were huge boats. Shipped the lumber from the Noyo Point to this boat and load. It used to take pretty near a week to load a boat. And some of them ships, you know, they'd come there and load at Noyo, great big ships, and go to foreign lands with it, you know, like France or Germany or something. they didn't have that kind of lumber there, you know.
When they get out there, they blow the whistle 3 times to let the people back on shore or on the dock that they're clear out in safety, because there are so many rocks there. I mean, it's not like a regular harbor. And so you'll watch this and you'll see 3 blasts of white steam come out of that stack, kind of as the boat starts to turn more to the right. There's 1, I believe. There's 2. And there's 3. Anyway, my godfather and dentist, Dr. Glenn Carlson, he's the one that edited this film for my father. He was pretty handy with his hand, had to be, being a dentist.